We're privileged this week to have a long list of interviews lined up for HSE Network. First up is Mr. Phil Walker, Corporate HSE Director of Kongsberg Automotive ASA. Kongsberg Automotive have just started on their ISO 45001 journey. So for the benefit of understanding to our viewers, the ISO standard that will codify the requirements of occupational health and safety management systems all over the world. The standard was inspired by OSHA's 18001, commonly referred to as ISO 18001, a British standard that until now has been applied internationally. When it is brought into effect, ISO 45001 will effectively be more context-focused version of the existing OSHA's 18001 standard. We'll be discussing with Phil his experience in implementing ISO 45001 in the automotive industry, how this resonates with that vertical specifically, the challenges and the pitfalls, and of course the results. Now let's get started. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for coming and doing an interview with the HSE Network. Phil Walker is the Corporate HSE Director for Kongsberg Automotive ASA, and he has been leading the charge on some focus on ISO 45001 journey. So I wanted to get some insight really, Phil, onto the experience, I guess, that you've had in implementing ISO 45001. The automotive industry specifically, though, comparison to other industries, and how I guess that's resonated within the vertical, in that vertical specifically, in the challenges, pitfalls, and of course the results. So let's get started. I guess the first question that I have for you is, why has Kongsberg now decided to start the IS 45001 journey?
Well, probably there's a few reasons really. We were looking at why were some of our manufacturing plants much better than others, and we looked at what our best plants were, and one of the things that differentiated those was they had certification to OSHAS 18001. Just two of our locations had that, and also they had a really engaged management team. And so from that we then thought, well, this new 45001 international standard has come out, and that it made sense to start looking towards that, and using that as a platform to improve the rest of our business really. And so that was why we selected it. The other thing was wanting to be ahead of the curve in terms of the expectations in the automotive industry. It's not yet a requirement in the industry, but we could see that that was what was incoming. So I felt that it was, now was the time to start on that journey, and basically bring all of our plants into certification by the end of 2020. So that's what we've started to move towards.
That's quite a challenge. How many plants have you?
So we've got 28 plants that we're working on, and we're doing, we're through the course of doing training at the moment, and we've got a number of people within the business who are trained to give that, and then working with all of the plants regularly to help them, give them resources and tools to help them move forward and to certification.
That's great. I mean, are there any specific that's, with that amount of plants and trying to get that rolled out across every single one, is there any sort of challenges that you foresee or are going through at the moment?
I mean, one of the things that it does, the standard is it does focus on risk, so risk assessments is certainly a key area of the standard, and getting people to recognise and understand how they have to really assess their whole business. That for some plants has perhaps been a challenge, and so we're working through with that. The new standard also focuses on worker participation and consultation, and so for some, having the shop floor workers involved in the business of setting targets and being involved in solutions maybe is not the norm in some countries. And so that for some locations, that's something new that they've never done before, Perhaps for those countries where they've got strong unions and unions have been involved in the past, that's nothing unusual. But for others, it's to have shop floor workers and the management of the plant sitting down together and deciding things is perhaps not the norm. So that's one sort of aspect that 45001 brings in as a requirement. You can't get around it; you have to bring it in. But it is a positive.
Yeah.
So that kind of engagement is really what I see is helpful about 45001 in the plants.
That sounds really good as well in comparison to maybe other industries. Do you think there's any differences in automotive to other industries in general?
I think the automotive companies are really being pushed in terms of corporate responsibility, and that means that they're looking at their supply chain. And want to know that the suppliers that they're using are looking after the people that work there. And it's already been there from an environmental perspective, but now they're also starting to look at what are their suppliers doing in terms of the safety of their employees. And so that, I believe, in the future will be a requirement in automotive, like 9001 has been for safety, that you can't supply an automotive company without having those standards in place. It's going to be the same with safety. They're going to expect that as a starting point. And we've already seen that some of the big manufacturers that we supply to, like BMW or Fiat Chrysler, have already now mandated just this year that you have to be certified to 45001. So for us at Kongsberg Automotive, that also just reinforced that this was the right plan to start, when we started it a little while ago.
Sounds like you're on quite an exciting journey with it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you foresee any sort of showstoppers at the moment, or is it all looking pretty smooth?
I think it's going to be pretty smooth. We've over time we've sort of tailored our internal requirements within Kongsberg Automotive to match some of the requirements of the 18,000. Right. So it's not perhaps such a big step for the plants to now move towards the new standard. So I think that's going to be an easy process for most of them. There's work to do. There's training to be had. There's perhaps a change in culture and mindset in terms of maybe the management team, because there's a strong emphasis in the standard on management involvement and them being involved. But I do believe that it's going to give us increased and improved rigour within the business in all locations by having to be externally certified and regularly. So that it just gives us it's the next step up. It gives us that platform to then be working on the next improvements going forward.
And one other thing, I guess, for the benefit of the viewers of the HSC network, any safety leaders trying to implement 45001, any recommendations on how best to go about doing it from a HSC director perspective?
I guess from a director's perspective, it's having a clear plan, deciding on when you want to achieve it by, giving all of the plants and the locations clear direction on the expected time frames for doing training, for doing gap analysis. That's important to actually analyse where you are against the standard, and most of the certification bodies can help in terms of providing documents that help you with that. And then one of the things for us is certainly getting in early with the certification bodies to say, we want our audit at this time. Because it's a new standard, it's very popular at the moment, and the numbers of auditors that are trained to be able to certify against that standard is perhaps limited. So have to get in early, I would say, and make sure you fix those dates.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thank you ever so much for doing the interview with HSC Network, and I know you're a big advocate of our events and been supportive of them over the years, and we look forward to hopefully interviewing you again for the network in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you.